There's this seismic shift happening in the world of money. It's kind of quiet, a little complex, but it involves an amount of capital so ridiculously huge, it's literally reshaping our entire global economy. And it all kicks off with one, honestly, almost unimaginable number.
Just take a good look at that number. $87 trillion. I mean, really let that sink in for a second.
So what is that? Well, that's the total wealth held by the world's 23 million richest people. We're talking about a group with enough cash to literally move markets, build entire industries from scratch, and place these massive, massive bets on what the future is going to look like.
And here's the thing. Right now, they're completely changing how, where, and even why they invest. Which, of course, raises the big question, right? What do they know that the rest of us don't? What are they seeing on the horizon? And all of this brings us to what people are calling the Great Wealth Reshuffle. And look, this isn't your typical story about the rich just getting richer. No, this is about the very nature of wealth itself. It's changing hands, and its priorities are being completely rewritten.
So, what's the main engine driving all this change? Believe it or not, it's an even bigger number. $124 trillion.
That is the absolutely mind-boggling amount of money that's expected to be passed down to a younger generation by 2048. We are literally talking about the single largest wealth transfer in all of human history. And for this new generation taking the reins, yeah, the old rules just don't apply anymore.
So, okay, how are they so different? Well, for starters, the whole idea of return on investment has taken on a completely new meaning for them. It's about a whole lot more than just pure profit.
And check this out. There's this really interesting quote from a recent DIFC report. It says they're pursuing multidimensional prosperity. Now that phrase, that just perfectly captures this whole new way of thinking.
But what does that even mean, multidimensional prosperity? Well, it means, yeah, of course, making money is still on the table. But now it's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. They're also focused on stuff like building resilience in a crazy, volatile world, making a real environmental and social impact, keeping up a solid family reputation, and making sure their portfolio is flexible enough to handle pretty much anything that gets thrown at it.
So all of this really points to one core idea. We're living in this era of, well, let's call it global uncertainty. And in a world like that, just chasing the highest possible profit isn't going to cut it. The new goal is to build wealth that can actually survive big shocks and last for generations to come.
Okay, so we get the philosophy. But how does that actually look in a real-life investment portfolio? Well, turns out it's a complete, radical break from tradition.
For decades, the absolute gold standard for investing was something called the 60-40 portfolio. Super simple. You'd put 60% of your money in stocks for growth and the other 40% in super safe, reliable bonds for stability. For a long, long time, that was the bedrock of managing wealth.
But here's the kicker. According to all the latest data, for the world's wealthiest investors, that model is totally obsolete.
So a study from Long Angle actually projected what the new average portfolio will look like by 2026, and here it is. Okay, so public stocks, they're still in the mix at about 51%, but look at this. Bonds and cash have just shrunk down to only 10%. And the real headline here is that massive 28% slice that's now dedicated to private and alternative assets. We're talking about things like investing in private companies, real estate, venture capital, stuff the average person just can't get their hands on easily.
And this gives us a brand new rule of thumb, the 60-10-30 portfolio. So roughly 60% in stocks, a tiny 10% in bonds and cash, and a whopping 30% in those private and alternative investments. This shift, this is the financial engine that's driving the whole great reshuffle.
All right, so the big question is, where exactly is all that private and alternative money actually going? I mean, they're not just buying random stuff. No, they're making these super targeted, long-term bets on what they believe are these huge, world-changing trends.
And the biggest, most significant of these trends, without a doubt, it's the AI revolution. I mean, you look at reports from UBS, from DIFC. They all point to AI as a top priority, and it's attracting absolutely enormous amounts of capital from the ultra-wealthy.
And the scale of this investment, it's almost hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about $527 billion.
And get this, that's what Goldman Sachs thinks major tech companies are going to spend on AI infrastructure in the year 2026 alone.
So wealthy investors are the ones pouring money into the private and public companies that are riding that massive tidal wave of cash.
But AI is really just the tip of the iceberg. The same kind of long-term thinking is pushing huge investments into other key areas. They're placing big bets on the future of energy and power, on how we sustainably manage critical resources like water, and on that massive wave of automation that is just transforming pretty much every industry you can think of.
Okay, so let's bring this back home. Why should any of this matter to you if you don't happen to have a billion-dollar portfolio? Well, because these aren't just trends for the super rich. Think of them more like signposts for where the future is headed. See, the way the world's most sophisticated investors put their money to work, it acts as a really powerful early warning system, a leading indicator. Where they're placing their bets today usually shows us where the rest of the market, new technologies, and even job growth will be tomorrow.
So, if we boil it all down, the key things to take away from this whole reshuffle are pretty clear. First, expect a big cultural shift where value starts to mean something more than just profit. Second, get ready for AI to speed up its integration into literally every part of our lives. And third, keep an eye out for massive amounts of money being thrown at solving huge long-term problems, which is going to create entirely new industries along the way.
Ultimately, this great reshuffle shows us that the world's wealthiest people aren't just trying to hang on to their money anymore. No, they are actively funding and building the world of tomorrow, which leaves us with one final, really big question. Are they building a future that's going to be good for everyone?